I want to make this video about a topic that's kind of raunchy, and a lot of philosophers or thinkers, they really don't want to go there because there is always a huge backlash. But the last one I heard about was there was a book was written as Bell Curve, and a lot of people attacked the book because it it was saying that the whites are smarter than blacks, and then but I want to tackle this as a form of demographics, and the way to do it is go back to the Islamic tradition and what happened in our history. Actually, when the religion of Islam came, and Prophet Muhammad came, there was a lot of backlash, there was a lot of hostility towards his spirituality, and it was a complete package of social reform, religious and legal reform. There was a lot of resistance to it, and there is a verse in Quran that refers to this. It does talk about empires and how empires, they try to maintain their demographics to preserve what made them great. But these roots, they're now as honorable and as worthwhile as a lot of politicians, they think that these are good things. For example, the British Empire and the American Empire that came after it was mostly based on white races and their extreme militarism, and just on and on conquest and ruining many places. And when the British Empire ended, or even previous empires like Ottoman, things did not get worse. Actually, they got better. And in the process of empire building, a lot of other races came inside. They were kind of became domesticated, or they became part of the empire. And actually, they were the ones that maintained or made the empire, even when it had really ended, better. And they were the ones that were the owner, or they inherited the empire, despite what the original historians would say. For example, the Roman Empire, it ended up being owned by Germanic tribes. There were three emperors that they were of German origin, and they were the ones that actually maintained the empire towards the very end. And the British Empire ended, but then the wealth that it has acquired through its banking system survived. And then I don't think this will be the case with the American Empire, because Americans have bankrupted themselves, so there isn't really a wealth that will be preserved after this one ends. But also there is a verse in Quran that says that if God wanted, He would, or the divinity would replace you from your own genes, from your own selves, a better nation, a more robust people. And actually, looking at the Iranian society after the Iranian Revolution, is a far more robust society. It has a better economy, it has better military, it has people are more integrated, it has acquired greater wealth, has repelled foreign sanctions, and this can also be said of the Russian. After the Soviets, the Russians, their military, their technology is much better. They're more democratic, they're far less militant and militaristic. They respect international law. It's not the case with the Americans. The same goes with the British. Their demographics now is a lot more Indian, blacks, and they seem to be functioning much better. And the wealth that was squandered in foreign ventures, in infighting, is now coming in and seeping into the people themselves, and the democratic processes and practices are far more prevalent in their society. The same goes with their legal system. The British legal system is quite independent, and you can have some faith that there will be justice, independent of the political system. It is better and more robust than the American system. So when the empires die out, things don't become worse. Only certain groups or certain individuals they lose out, but then the people that were for example, the whites, they are the operators of the American empire. They would probably do much better, because the resources that were dedicated technologically or militarily or financially to maintaining the empire is now going to sit dormant, and somebody else is going to pick that up, or they will pick it up and do something better with it, something more robust and valuable. Then this also can be extended to some extent to the racial makeup of society. It's not really true that the whites are better race. They are not. In fact, if you look at the IQ and productivity and smarts, you see that the Asian, like Japanese, Korean, who else? Chinese, even Mongoloid races, they are generally have higher IQs, and they are more industrial. And then also the kids that are mixed kids racially, like there are some whites, some what else? Some Asian. For example, a lot of Turks, a lot of people that live in Asia, like in Turkey, Kazakhstan, or you go all the way east, Mongolia, coming down to northern Afghanistan. They are really not the original Aryans or the original Persians. They are or original Indo-Europeans. They are really mixed, because there was Asiatic invasions. And if you go into Europe, you see a lot of women. They have like this almond eyes. They are really the descendant of the Mongolian invaders. I met, when I was playing in one of the movies, I met a lady. She was, I think, from Scandinavia, and she told me that her blood was mixed. She was had Muslim ancestors. She was European now, but so actually there is a lot of prophecies by European psychics and other psychics say that Europe will become like a worthless continent. You know, and a lot of the Europeans are saying, "Oh, our countries are becoming invaded." You know, invasion by immigration, and actually, I think this is a very good thing because the kids or the population that will inherit these places will be far more mixed, and I know a lot of people, they don't have experience with mixed races or mixed societies like Chicano or Iranians that are resident here, or well, I had American wife. She was white, and my son is a mixed kid, and he's very smart. Also physically much better well built than just regular whites. So I don't agree with what the Trump or the American government is doing, is to try to maintain this demographics to be like white all the time. So what does it do? It's just the desire of the older white population that has created all this mess. Is their empire is dying, they're retiring, leaving all these fraud and all these mansions that nobody knows how to buy or live in, and wanting to own the future. And so what if the future has a mind of its own? What if the future is going to be better, even though it might not be this demographics? It might be far different. I also like mixed cultures, not genetically different. For example, I think that like the blacks that are in the United States, well, even their genes are pretty mixed from many different black strains, and also they have white and other races in them. But I think that besides the genetics, the fact that they had to deal with many other cultures and live in a place where they were not very welcome, and they were the underdog. Even now, it made them very robust and resilient kind of people. I see like many companies that they are owned by blacks, and they have a lot of common sense, and this you sense that this is good company. And even though a lot of I see that a lot of CEOs of blacks, they do this stuff like the American CEOs, and they run the same show, but they have under them other blacks that are either family or women they have, and they pull all the hard work. But the companies, they seem more geared to stay in business and for a long term, rather than American companies that the CEO just sells the company, has no loyalty to United States, has no loyalty to employees. That's not the case with the black companies. They're different. Also, what has made them more resilient and also better kind of company or institution is black ministers are usually more in touch with what Christianity is teaching or meant to teach, and they are more aware of what's going on in the world and their relationship. The white ministers, they have a very institutionalized ways of doing things, and their kind of Christianity seems more reactionary and more servient to the political system than the, their black counterparts. That's my feeling. I think the black ministers and the black intellectuals, they're more aware and more like a real intellectual would be like Hassan. They're not the woodwork. They're different. That's the feeling that comes through. Then other minorities like Asian and Korean and Japanese. When you meet Korean companies, or you just can't help but notice that they have a great wealth. Their intense resilience, smarts. They're usually small company. Everybody works together, and the profitable companies, doesn't matter where they are at. Well, I went to Mexico. I saw that there is a Korean community. Many companies or restaurants, they're owned by Koreans, or manufacturing is over there. It's like I could say the same thing with the Iranians. And Iranians, they're very mixed blood. I mean, I went to this bank, and I was talking to the branch manager. She's very nice. I think she's Korean, and I have Asian blood. I asked her, what percentage of my blood you think is Asian? And she looked at me and she said, I think you're 25% Asian. Probably that's pretty close to what it actually is. And my IQ is off the chart. I think hers or the Asians, they're pretty smart people and also very hardworking. Then one comes in and looks at the whites, and you see right now their empire is collapsing, but a lot of white males, they are turning gay, and they also have acquired political power, and they are in your face wherever you go, belligerent, and also they are very shaky because they know the economic system is falling apart, and even though they might have some political upper hand, they could be the future low class, low income group. And then I could look at the whites that are older and they are retiring. They have all this mess, they have left behind all this debt, and they still want to tell the future how the future should be, like Trump, and deporting people, and intense hostility toward the Spanish. Of all the groups, Chicanos and Paisanos, well, the Paisanos, this is the term they use for Mexicans that are really they come from Mexico. They are not like mixed. They didn't grow up in the United States. So the Paisanos, I had a lot of chance to see how Paisanos act, because well, I had a fist fight with my ex. This happened in almost 2000 or 1999 and then I ended up in the can. And then the immigration came after me, but I defeated it in the courts, and I got my what they call it, I'm considered a national. It's itself a little miracle right there. But I went through the system, not only the jail system, but also through the INS. That's what they call them. And of all the minorities, the Paisanos are the ones that get their asses kicked far more than anybody else, Chicanos or blacks, and Paisanos, their culture is very. I think what I thought of them, that they were very sweet people, and they were the really the people of Mexico, and their their culture is nothing like what the United States propaganda machine or mainstream reflects, because Mexico has grown economically in population, and has a lot of manufacturing, a lot of wealth of its own, and the paisano culture is very laid back and does not become, like all worked up. They don't have a lot of drama, and they're also very family oriented. They care about each other. Well, I met some that where the U.S. government was deporting to Mexico, and some that were like women and children that were staying back, and I could hear their communications between each other. Seems like I would say they're very strong culture. And the only thing that even comes close is Iranians, and the way Iranians are so integrated, even Jewish Iranians with the society is like when you meet, there is relationship, there is a strong friendship and relationships, even across many inter many minorities that we have together. Uh, so I think that the future demographics of United States and Europe will be these groups. This is like blacks that have their own little companies. They're successful. Mexicans, Chicanos, then a lot of different minorities like Chinese or Japanese or Koreans or Indians. Usually, for example, I went to Indian, Cyprus is Indian mostly. The companies are far stronger and better company than any U.S. company. Like also, if you go to downtown LA, you look at many companies are owned by Iranian Jews. That company is going nowhere. The same I could say with about the black, and because their resources comes back to them, is not spent in foreign wars. This is a better company, and this demographics of these people is the future of the United States. Despite whatever Trump might say or what he might do, what will remain, for example, when you get out of California, you go to mainland USA and like East Coast. For example, I was in New England for a while, and those companies and those minorities, they're not as strong. And if there is economic collapse or things change, I don't think they will do as good as these other like black companies or Korean companies. They're more fragile. For example, the fragility I see in New England is that their culture is very close, and it's like colonial time racist culture, and they repel or reject anybody else, no matter how close. I mean, I could pass for a white, but I would get rejected. The same. For example, you see that right now for example, in New Hampshire or Maine, there is a lot of Latinos are moving into these states that are almost 95% or so all white, and their economy is getting better, and in fact these are the people that are doing all the employment on jobs than the whites. I think that when the economic system that was built by the globalists, by the empire, it falls apart, then these groups that are more fragile, they're more dependent on central bank or central government, they will not be doing so well, and they will be trading or selling themselves off to the Chinese, to the whoever, Arabs, and then it will become like Europe, more immigration, whether you like it or not, of Muslims or Indians and whoever that wants these properties or these places and can do a better job of managing it. For example, I saw that when an industry was falling apart, like video game industry, I was working, and it was falling apart because they had come up with CDs. It wasn't cartridge based. But as the industry was shifting, more Asians would come in and make a little shop, because Asians are more, they keep track of the money. They're not as sloppy with the profits and the losses. So this is a trend that will continue. More foreign individuals, parts of the population, will come in and buy a different neighborhood. This is actually what will be the demographics of the United States if it is united in the future. Plus, they will be doing better job, and then the whites will become like employees, or they're more geared to work for a institution or a company, or depend on the government, something like that. And I guess I think that a lot of psychics that they predicted the future of Europe and United States. They always talk like the most trashy words about the European demographics, or like it would be like a Muslim invasion and la la la. The same with the Trump, the last vestiges of white economic and political power. They are deporting the paisanos and doing this and that. Yeah, right now they are the political power, but we might be on the last page of the empire before their economy also collapses, and they are not an economic or political system that can back all these young whites or millennials they have. So this is actually the future, rather than what they projected to be. Anyhow, I am very interested in these topics. I sit and kind of ponder over these stuff. The only philosopher in Islamic history that talks about these things, and he was originally from Spain and he became Muslim. His name was Ibn Arabi, and he has a lot of books, and they say that he's the inventor of what they call it, social studies, or how empires form and stuff like that. He had a lot of theories, sociology, yeah, that's the word, and these stuff, some of them are very underlying currents that show themselves over a long period of time. Well, thank you very much for being in my YouTube channel. Please subscribe, and also please leave a comment. Thanks.